So let me tell you a bit about the inspiring gentleman virtually seated right across from me. Patrick Lencioni is recognized as a true pioneer in leadership and business. He's a New York Times bestselling author and, according to the Wall Street Journal, one of the most in-demand speakers in America. Fortune magazine has called him one of the gurus you should know. Pat is the architect of organizational health, a concept that he calls the last competitive advantage in business today. As founder and CEO of the Table Group, he spends his time writing books and articles related to leadership and organizational health, speaking and consulting to CEOs and their teams. He lives in the Bay Area with his wife and 4 boys. Lord, I have 2 and I'm freaking out, so 4 blows me away. I am so honored to present this humble, thoughtful gentleman to you today. With that, welcome, Pat.
Thank you for having me, Tony. And you
It
don't know
is
that I'm humble. I mean, you have to judge by what I say in the next few minutes. So I
Well,
could be really.
I won't judge, but having read your books, you have a way. So we'll get back to that one in a minute,
All
okay?
right.
So we're going to cover a lot of territory. It's going to be painless, I'm sure. In our final few minutes together, we're going to play a fun little game called The Zen of Pat, where I get to ask you some philosophical type fill in the blank questions. How does that sound?
I'm game for it.
Cool. And if you're wondering about the whole cat thing, today happens to be Hug Your Cat Day. Yeah, it's a real thing. And on this unofficial holiday, we're supposed to give our feline friend a big hug. So everyone listening, if you have a cat on your team, I encourage the hug because it might be just the thing to stop them from plotting against you.
Who
Okay,
comes up with these things?
are you ready?
Yes.
All right, cool. Here we go. So I am now showing our audience examples of some pretty fierce teamwork. Cats, and for those dog lovers as well, dogs really bringing it and doing some amazing things together. So let's talk about teams, Pat. In your latest book, The Ideal Team Player, you return to the subject of teams. Can you tell me why?
It was somewhat accidental. When the first book, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, came out, I think 17 years ago. Sometimes people would ask the question, "Hey, gee, are some people better at doing these things than others?" And I didn't have an answer. And then years later, we discovered we had an answer. We just didn't realize it, and that we had these core values in our organization that we had chosen. And our clients really wanted to use the same core values we had. And we said, no, you can't do that. They're ours. And we didn't realize that we later realized those were the 3 virtues that a person needs to have in order to be a great team player. So that we discovered it by accident years after the fact. And we weren't going to write a book about it. And then somebody said, you really need to write a book about that. And I thought it was going to be too simple, Tony. I thought, I don't think this is a book. And somebody said, we think it is. And we wrote it, and it's probably been adopted and more quickly purchased and utilized and implemented than any book I've ever written. So,
That's terrific.
so I wrote it because people encouraged me to, and it seems like it was a good decision. Thank God for them.
Yeah, totally. So the prior book that I talked to you about before our mics went live, which is The 5 Dysfunctions, I think was published in 2002 or so. So thinking about today's teams, they seem to me anyway to be far more diverse. They're digital, of course.
Yep.
There are frequent changes in membership, so arguably they're more dynamic. Are today's teams, Pat, fundamentally different from teams, say, 15 years ago?
They they aren't. The challenge of making them great is greater.
Hmm.
So in an era gone by when you didn't have people in different continents and different time zones working together, it was a little easier to do this. They were still pretty broken, because people are fallible human beings, but I think it's more of a challenge. It's actually more important that we do these things now. And what we've found is that project teams, because there's more project work that goes on today. People don't necessarily work at a company for 30 years, but they'll work on a project together, and they could be together for 9 months working on something. And what we found is that those are the people that want to implement this, because they know that if they can spend a few days up front doing some things, they can get a heck of a lot more done in the next 9 months.
Right.
So I think the challenge is greater, the need is greater, and the importance of making our teams work is greater.
So what are some common fallacies about teams? For example, is building a great team more of an art, a science, all the above, none of the above? What some things have you figured out or learned from working with so many executives over the years about teams that simply are not true?